In this section of the videotape series, we'll focus in on parterre or mat wrestling. Offense as well as defense will be covered in the following areas: gut wrench, lift, and the reverse lift.
The first technique we're going to take a look at is the gut wrench technique. And before we start, the bridge is the foundation of the gut wrench. Very important. The application of this basic skill leads directly into the gut wrench technique. Our athlete, again, is going to start with flat feet, his feet about 4 to 6 inches from his rear end. We're going to start with elevated hips. Now, we want to emphasize this push with the thighs and with the hips. And also, when the athlete makes his bridge, emphasize this, that he bends and gets as high as he can with his hips rather than putting a lot of strain on his back. You want a full arch, but if you want to increase the height in the arch, emphasize the fact that he should bend at the hips. Now we'll just do a fluid motion, touches the shoulders. You can see a nice push, nice power there in the legs. The other thing, notice how the athlete here uses his hands. He's not using the hands to push himself up on the bridge. He's only using his hands to steady his body from sliding forward. Again, a nice fluid motion, you get a good hip pop right here with the legs. Okay, the next thing we're going to take a look at is the lock. Before we talk about a lock, the first thing is it's important to secure the lock as quickly as possible. We'll look at 3 ways to secure the lock. The first way is this. We're going to come here, reach over the top of one shoulder, step up if you need to. We're going to pull up here. The far arm, you should just slide underneath and come right back to secure the lock. From another angle, it looks like this. The defensive man probably will keep his chest and armpits as tight as he can to the mat. In this case, it's hard to secure a lock here, hard to secure a lock here. We've got to open them up. Forearm on the mat, reach over the top of the shoulder, lift up, slide the forearm underneath, secure the lock. That's the first way. Now, another way, if his shoulders aren't there, if you leave a little bit of space, you can come right up to here, secure the lock starting high, and then to adjust that lock, take your knee, stick it right between his legs, pull the lock down. If you want a mid-range gut wrench, lock on the mid-range. If you want a low gut wrench, just continue to pull it all the way down to the very low spot. A third way is, turn this way. A third way, we're going to secure the hip. We're going to go into it like we go into a reverse lift type of a lock. Both hands, again, he's flat, he's real tight. I can't secure the lock here. I come to here, I can't get that arm up. I'm going to come here. Notice on the far leg, I'm sitting my shin right across the back of his leg. So I'm blocking his knee a little bit so it won't go anyplace. I'm grabbing the other hip with 2 hands, pull high to create some space. This hand comes underneath, and I've got my lock. So those are 3 quick, easy ways to secure the lock. Now, the importance of the lock, first of all, the tightness is very important. All the way through the technique, we want to be able to create some type of a torque. And when we get into this later, we want to be able to load the hips and turn the wrestler's body this way. From a defensive standpoint, he's going to try to keep his belly and his hips square to that mat and glued to that mat. A common mistake with locks when athletes start to do this gut wrench is they'll slip their lock. We want to stay chest to back at all times. So the tightness of the lock is very important. The type of lock, some people prefer this, some people prefer this. Whatever type of lock you take, when you're ready to do the gut wrench, you need to cinch that and leave no space and make that as tight as possible. A real good drill for developing a tight lock is this. We'll bring out another athlete here and we'll do a drill. We're going to put one athlete on all fours, and let's have you face this way. The other athlete's going to come up, secure a lock, and we want to emphasize tight chest to back. And we're going to do this a little hang drill. He's going to start by hanging, then he's going to lift and pull his torso without touching his opponent or touching the mat all the way over to the other side, up and over and hang, up and over and hang, up and over and hang. Now this does a couple things. It develops a tight lock. Notice he's not sliding side to side. He's staying chest to chest. The other thing is it gives him a feel for creating a good solid torque on his opponent. Okay, that's good. As you can tell, this is a very, very hard drill to do for both athletes, but it will develop very good strength in that tight lock position. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the start position on the gut wrench. It's hard to teach a gut wrench without talking a little bit about defense, but from a defensive standpoint, the athlete is going to continue to move and try to keep the offensive wrestler out of position on top. In order to prevent this, to get a solid start in the gut wrench, it's important that once you secure your lock, and sometimes even before you secure your lock, that you take this position here. As you can see, I'm taking my shin, placing it on the back of his thigh or his hamstring, knees on the outside, foot's on the inside. My other leg is doing exactly the same thing, and I'm just sitting on top of him just like this to prevent him from moving. Now from here, I can go ahead and secure my lock. I may have to step up and compromise my start position a little bit, but once you get your lock, you can come right back to the solid start position here. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is breaking your opponent's defense. Now, there's two things you want to focus on. The first thing is you want to focus on beating the hip. The second thing is you want to focus on breaking his arm. Not literally, of course, but you want to break his defense. So the hip is the most important. The arm is second most important. So a little drill that you can do, you want to force reaction a little bit too. Little drill you can do, and it's like a freestyle hip tilt, is right to there. See how I beat the hip with my knee and with my leg? Some people say this is using legs, but actually in Greco we use legs quite a bit. There's legal ways, there's illegal ways to use legs. This is a very legal way because I'm not finishing my turn by blocking. But we want to get this idea, beating the hip here to here. I beat the hip, beat the hip. You can do this, a quick little drill, get your partner to react a little bit more. You can just do it without the hips, just getting used to this motion, because driving that knee is very important. Start with this, go to this, controlling, lifting the hip. Because when we load the hips, we want to be able to pull the hip on top of our hip. And then you can come back to a lock position, do the same drill from a lock, there to there, there, there to there. So beating the hip is very important little drill. The next part of the gut wrench we're going to take a look at is loading the hips. Now when we do this, we've got our athlete, he's in a good start position, he's got a good tight lock. The first thing we need to do is a subtle little fake to one side. What we want to do is we want to get a little bit of an edge to beat this hip. We're going to force a little bit of reaction by the defensive man. He looks to the right, he thinks he's going right. Then we're going to explode back to the other side, beat the hip, and load the hips. This is the correct position for loading the hips. As you can see, we've got flat-footed position, very similar to the start bridge position that we worked on, the basic skill. A little bit of space between the feet and the butt. We've got one wrestler's hips loaded on top of this wrestler's hips. We've got a tight lock. The other thing you can't see from this angle is the gut wrencher's face should be looking up towards the ceiling. Now we're in a real good position to do our finish. Just like to point out one thing, sometimes, and it's very common for athletes to leave this leg down here, or for this athlete to start to slide off the hip right to there. Very difficult to finish the gut wrench from this position. You have to have solid, secure control of this. So this athlete needs to force his knee up, do something to secure this hip. We call this loading the hips. Now in this position, as you can see, the gut wrencher is in a very strong, powerful position to be able to finish. He's going to do an explosive hip pop bridge and then just arch and roll right through. As you can see, with the loaded body here, he controls his opponent very easily. Okay, let's take a look at a gut wrench from another angle. Couple things. You get a good look here at the head position of the wrestler. One common mistake that wrestlers make when they start doing gut wrenches is they want to get to this position and they want to roll through across their shoulders to finish. This is a dangerous position. They can get stopped and caught on their back and pinned. Also, there's a whole lot less power in an athlete in this position just rolling through, trying to pull his opponent through with his arms, compared to the power that you have generated from your thighs and hips in a good, strong back arch hip pop position. So see the proper position, or the proper finish again, high back arch, rolls them all the way through. Okay, a drill that you can do with your athletes once they've learned the gut wrench, a good warm-up drill that you can do is, we call it shadow guts, and they just do gut wrenches without a partner. They go through each step of it. They get their lock, fake one way, drive the hip, load the hip, go into their high arch.
Here's several examples of a gut wrench. They're laid in at normal speed so that you get a sense of timing in the way the athlete is executing the move.
Next, we're going to talk about parterre defense, and we'll start out with the basic position. We want to take a position flat on the mat here. The first thing we want to talk about is the weight for parterre defense should be distributed centered on your hips, upper part of your thigh, and into the lower part of your abdomen, right here. Now, one of the ways you can transfer the weight there, if I'm just relaxed here, the weight is distributed across my whole body. But if I pinch my butt cheek slightly, you can see that pinch, and you can see how I elevate ever so slightly. My feet come off the mat, my knees come off the mat. My butt and torso area is real tight. And then I want to arch my chest just a little bit. This basic position is really the foundation and the start position for the gut wrench. The next thing we want to take a look at, the legs should be spread at a comfortable base right here to start with anyways. The hips are square to the mat at all times. The other thing is hand position. We want about a 45-degree angle. Want the shoulders up and pinched together just slightly, again, maintaining tight shoulder position. The hands should be turned in a little bit. Can be dangerous. You can get caught with your post on the mat in this position if you turn in slightly, put the weight on the palms of your hands. The other important thing when we look at defending a gut wrench, you want to be able to slide and move here. And if you're at a 45-degree angle, your shoulders are up, you're sliding on the palms of your hands, you can slide again here. Tendency to get caught, possibility for injury, and also increases your risk of getting turned. So that's our basic parterre defense. Now we're going to bring one of our athletes out and look at an important concept in parterre defense called a power line. I think when people look at parterre defense, generally they look at it and they think that parterre defense is accomplished by posting an arm, posting a leg. And although that's an important part of it, and your reaction to get to that position is very important, even more important is the way the athlete uses the rest of his body. So let's just assume that there's an attack to the right, and the position is a post right, post right. Now, the back leg we're going to look at as being the anchor leg, and if we get another angle of this, we've got a gut wrench going right, so the athlete assumes a position here. He's going to keep his hips square to the mat. He posts his right leg, posts his right arm, slightly looks into the gut wrench. Now the back leg is what we want to focus in on. Notice the hip. Again, the athlete's very tight through here, tight through the hip and buttocks area, and is actually elevating this leg off slightly. Take a look at an example of poor position where the athlete turns his hips down and posts. Very dangerous, because at all times throughout the gut wrench, the athlete must adjust back and forth to his opponent's attack. Here, he's very vulnerable to an offside gut. But if you think about keep the hips square, you've got a gut wrench right position. We've got very good position. Now, I want you to draw an imaginary line here and have your athletes think about making a power line from the top of their right hand, or if there's, again, a gut wrench attack right, you've got a power line from his right post arm, drawn all the way down through here to the center of his body, all the way to his back anchor leg. This is where the power for defending a gut wrench comes, and this is where we want to adjust back to every time there's a gut wrench attack. Okay, here again we have our basic start position in parterre for defense, and now we're going to look at a basic gut wrench position right. You can see the posting of the right leg, turning of the head. The head needs to stay up, posting of the arm. We make a power line down through this back leg. Gut left, gut right, gut left. Now, when we go back and forth on this drill, and this is a drill that coaches can drill their athletes to train reaction. Reaction time, adjusting to their opponent's attack, is very important. And again, the adjustment of the hips is very important. Okay, we've looked at the basic gut wrench defense without a partner. Now we're going to take a look at it with a partner on top. Watch the bottom man's reactions, and keep in mind that this is a battle for the hips. So again, we'll emphasize the point that the hips of the parterre defense man need to stay square at all times to the mat, and he needs to be ready to react back and forth. Okay, we'd like to do one other drill now and show you a drill to emphasize the idea of the power line. The center part, pull off just for a second, the center part of the defense man's body should be solid, strong, and rigid. We talked about the power line here. Here's a drill that you can emphasize this concept to your wrestlers. Put a wrestler on top. We're going to tell the bottom man to actually break this power line and let the top man load him on his hips. Now we see the power line's broken. We see a bit of a jackknife here. Now we're going to ask the top man to stop right here and just act like dead weight. The defensive wrestler now is going to make a power line by straightening out this leg, and you can see how he pulls with leverage and with strong hips. He pulls his opponent right back on top again. Again, this is not a defense necessarily, but we just want to emphasize the power and the use of the hips in this way for the defensive man. I'll talk a little bit about movement in the parterre position. First basic principle of movement is we want short little motions, and we'll have a backward motion, we push with the hands, short motion, and every time the wrestler moves and then to the side, we've got a side to side, we've got a forward motion. Notice every time the defensive man moves, he always adjusts back to a solid position. He'll pull his hands a little ways and adjust back to his proper position again. Poor movement would be this, bringing the elbows all the way back, especially resting the elbows back here, but bringing the elbows in close to the side, turning a hip up, bringing the feet together, or legs together too close. Again, any movement that takes the bottom man out of his basic position is really not a good movement. So we want to emphasize short little movement patterns. Okay, another aspect of movement that we want to talk about are the purposes of movement. First of all, you want to move to react to your opponent's attack. Obviously, you need to adjust. There's a gut wrench right. He comes back to the left. You need to react back to that left gut wrench position. Okay, now we'll take a look at movement with the partner on top. The thing we want to keep in mind is the purpose in this movement is to prevent the top man, the attacking wrestler, from getting set, and we want to take him out of position. So the first thing is we want to work on breaking the lock. Notice the bottom man moves forward, and at all times he keeps his hips square, he keeps pressure on the lock. We'll take a look at that at another angle. Notice the hips are square, the pressure's on the lock. He breaks the top man's lock. Very good strategy in the defensive position. If a man can't get set, he's going to have a difficult time scoring. Now we'll take a look at another way to move and to off-balance the offensive attacker. This time the offensive man is going to have a good solid lock, lower or midsection lock. Now what we want to do with this is the bottom man wants to off-balance. So we're going to look at a little hip-hop side motion. See how he throws the top man off? Now a couple things, and it's hard to see at this angle, but notice that the bottom man, even when he hips in, he's keeping his hips square, so he's moving laterally. Once he knocks his opponent off position, he keeps the pressure on laterally and a little bit forward, and you can see the top man's really struggling there with his position. So movement to prevent the score, to prevent the attack, is very important in the parterre defense position. Okay, let's take a look at two more drills, excellent drills for developing parterre defense. The first one is a movement drill. What we're going to do is we're going to put our partner on top, is just going to straddle the bottom man, make him carry all of his weight, and we're going to have the bottom man move. Short little motions, short little movements. Very hard to move underneath, but this is a good way to train good strength and movement underneath and to keep your athlete real alert while he's on bottom. The second drill is this. Again, we did this for the gut wrench drill. For the offensive man, in our earlier series, but we're going to do the same hang drill, this time for the bottom man. Again, it takes a tremendous amount of torso and rib strength, especially when the offensive man has committed himself to a gut wrench. The position is very important, but also the strength of the torso and rib area is really a key part of having a strong gut wrench defense. This drill will help develop that. So the top man is going to hang and pull and torque. He's going to hang the other side. The bottom man should keep his head up. Try to maintain good, solid position, up and back, side to side. You can do this for time, and I'll guarantee you it's a workout. Parterre defense is probably the most important area of the sport right now, so it's very important that athletes understand good positioning and have the technique and strength to be able to prevent the top man from scoring in the parterre.
Apply what you just learned about gut wrench defense to these live examples. Hipping in and stepping over can be an effective counter to the gut wrench. You do have to be careful that it doesn't involve illegal use of the legs.
Okay, next we're going to take a look at a lift, and we're going to just show a classic swing step lift. First of all, the start position is the same as a gut wrench. You can see the shins are straddled the back of the hamstrings. The top man's going to take his lock. Now the difference with the lock, because we're lifting, we need a little bit more extension and a little bit more leverage. So the lifter is going to take a knuckle lock. He's going to extend his arms here. Now the swing step comes from this. The lifter is going to lift to the right. So the swing step, this leg is going to drop back. By doing this, it creates the impression that he's going left with the gut wrench, forces a reaction, and you want as much as possible to get the defensive man to turn his hip down. Now, from this point, what we can do is we can look at the actual lift as two parts. The first part is the snatch, and the second part is the lift. Now, to break the snatch part of this down a little bit more, very important when you snatch that you explode. Hard to lift, slow motion. We want a very explosive motion. So we're going to snatch, then we're going to look at readjusting the lock to make the hips tight. Once you snatch, it's important that you bring the bottom man's hips in tight with your hips, readjust the lock. The next thing then we're going to look at is a settling of the lifter's hips down low in a good solid lift position. We should be able to look at the lifter's back. His back should be straight with his opponent's hips in his hips. And then the last part is the lift. So we'll take a look at these motions up to the snatch position. So we've got swing step, step, snatch. Again, from the snatch, you can see this quick readjustment. The hips here, if you're not locked tight enough, you can always throw your opponent up again and readjust, sink that arm deep. Now we've got a secure lock. Hips are real tight. You can see the lifter's in a good solid position. Now he's going to come straight up, keep his head up, and he's going to lift. And then from that position, he can go into his belly to back or any other type of a finish that he'd like. Let's take a look at that again. One more time. This time we'll take a close look at that readjustment. What you want to do on the snatch also is throw that body up as high as you can, catch it, re-sink that arm. Okay, and go back down again, and let's see what happens when we don't secure that lock. Okay, see the space here, and it's a little bit harder to control the hips. Again, when we go to finish our lift, it's important that, like on the gut wrench, that we have a tight chest to chest or belly to back position so that the bottom man can't belly out and step over in defense. So now from here again, let's just adjust this. He's going to throw his partner up, readjust, cinch his lock. Now we've got a good, strong, solid position. An excellent drill that you can use with your athletes to develop the explosiveness of the snatch is just this. The bottom man is just going to stay real rigid with his body. The top man's going to come up and straddle one leg. He's going to reach down, grab the hips, and just throw his partner up and regrip, and then drop him, throw up, regrip, throw up, regrip. You can do it quicker, quick. You can do it for time. You can do it for repetitions. An excellent way to get your athlete used to snatching his opponent. Okay, we're going to take a look at a couple basic finishes from the swing step lift. And the first one is a straight over belly to back for 5 points. Got a swing step, opponent's up in the air, straight back and over for 5 points. Take a look at that at another angle. Nice, you guys. Okay, now same swing step lift. This time he's going to take it to the side for 3 points. Again, when we go to the side for 3, we want to concentrate on keeping the hips tight and rotating the man's hips through the air as quick as possible. We'll see that from another angle as well.
Two-time Olympic gold medalist John Ronigan of Norway does a great job of showing us how effective a combination gut wrench to a lift can be. Let's look at several more examples of finishes for the lift.
Okay, now we're going to take a look at the same swing step lift with a kick over finish. This kick over finish is real effective, especially when the wrestler can't step off and clear the leg. From another angle, we can see how important that kick on the inside leg is to finish. Thigh on thigh, elevates the high leg right into a high arch throw for 3 points. Now the last technique we're going to look at is a start of a lift, fake a lift, and actually switch off to a gut wrench on the far side. Again, this has to do with feeding the hip. Starts to lift, comes back to the other side and guts. And we'll take a look at that also from another angle.
The lift to a gut wrench is an extremely effective technique in Greco-Roman wrestling. Let's watch several examples. Position, strength, and power are all very important in the ability to execute lifts. It's important that your athletes feel comfortable lifting bodies. So as part of your training sessions, you can have them do lifting drills with another body, almost like they would lift weights. They can do from different positions and different angles. From a coaching standpoint, you want to make sure their position's correct. You want to make sure that they're lifting to the point of being fatigued, but take them step by step build them up to the place where they feel real comfortable and strong lifting bodies. Let's take a look at a few exercises that you can use with your athletes. We're going to take a look at lift defense, and before we do, I just want to talk about a couple concepts that are important to keep in mind. Throughout the entire defense, it's important for the defensive man to keep his body in a tight arch position, chest down, legs slightly up, almost in a snowplow type position. We're going to look at two movement patterns here that are very important. One in preventing the snatch, and the second one will be during the snatch. Now, keep in mind that when we're working with parterre defense, the objective is always going to be for the bottom man to keep moving himself out of position. When we looked at the lift, it was very important. The first thing, the snatch, the quick explosive snatch brought the defensive man to a good solid hip position where he could be lifted more easily. So the defensive man wants to prevent that good position and constantly move out of position. So the first is we're going to do this with this inside leg. Let's just picture a snatch on this side. The lifter is straddled here. The inside leg, we're just going to keep elevated slightly with short movements forward. Short movements forward. Again, you can see we're not bending at the knee, bending at the hip joint. Hips are still square. We'll come back again and take a look at a poor position. Again, if he turns the hip up as he lifts, turns the hip up, lifts the leg, and turns the hip up, that's not a real good position. The other thing is bending the knee and moving forward. Possibility you can get called for legs. So it's important to keep this leg straight, elevate right here at the hip joint, and push short movements, come back to position, short movements back to position. Okay, that's a movement pattern for preventing the snatch. Now the second one is, if it's too late to prevent the snatch, the lifter is stepped to the side, started to do the snatch, we're going to do what's called a bump and run. This is a little bit more dramatic type of a defense, but we need to do that to knock the lifter out of position. On this, again, this is the inside leg that's being straddled. The outside leg, we're going to pull this knee up to here, dig the toe in. The defensive man is going to push forward, elevate the inside leg, and bump. Again, notice the snowplow position here. We'll come back and look at that again. The outside leg is the push leg. Hips are still square. He's going to push, bump and run, and then recovers again back to a solid parterre position. One more time, if we can look on this side, this will be the push leg this time. Again, here we see a good position. The hips are square. A poor position would be the hips come up, and then there's a bump and run. Again, we never want to violate these principles. Hips should always be square. Push there, push and pull, elevate, and a good slide. You can do these drills with your athletes on their own with their parterre movement. You can do parterre defense or gut wrench movement, and then to a lift movement, just getting them used to these movement patterns and the good solid defensive positions. Okay, here's what it looks like with the partner on top and preventing the lift. The bottom man, he knows his partner is going to lift or his opponent's going to lift. He elevates with the inside leg and starts moving forward and a little bit away from the lift, and see how that keeps the top man out of position, prevents him from getting set and starting the lift. If you can beat the lift at this point, it's the safest place to be able to beat the lift. Now we'll take a look at that one more time. Notice the inside leg stays high and straight, short little movements forward and away from the lifter. Okay, now we'll take a look at the bump and run. The bump and run defense you have to use when the top man is a little bit more advanced in his lift. He steps up to snatch. push, bump and run, take him out of position. Top man again, steps up for the snatch. Again, bring it up, bring it up. That's it. Bring it up, bump and run. Nice. The bump and run drill is very important, so here's a drill you can use to develop the bump and run. Top man is just going to straddle and do a little snatch. As his hips come off, the bottom man is just going to continue to bump and run. Maintaining good position all the way through. The last section on lift defense, I just want to take a look at proper body position and just take a look at some of the mechanics in defending the lift. We've got a good solid lift position here. If we've got a good solid lift position, we've got a straight leg elevated in the center, head up, looking forward, actually forward and away, arms out, and a good snowplow position. This back leg should be turned down just a little bit. Now let's take a look at a poor position would be if he jackknifes, and if we can turn sideways here, see how his body's in a jackknife position? This leg is down, this leg is down. It makes it real easy for the top man to control and to hold. And if this leg is high, some athletes like to do that again, makes it easy to control and turn that hip. So we're going to just adjust back to a solid snowplow position. This angle, we've got the inside leg lifted, this leg down, moving forward and away from the lift. And see how much more difficult it is for the top man to hold and maintain a good lift position. So again, the whole idea is to make it as hard for the top man as possible to take him out of a good solid lifting position.
As you watch these examples of defending the lift, pay close attention to how smoothly you have to be able to transition between gut wrench defense and lift defense as the two moves work so closely together.
Now we're going to take a look at a basic reverse lift. And first of all, we're going to look at two ways to secure the lock. The first is the traditional way, where it's going to the far hip. Again, we saw that on the regular gut wrench, but this time instead of taking a gut wrench lock, we're going to secure a reverse lift lock. And the other way would be an inside lock, where we go to the near shoulder, elevate, sneak the inside arm underneath again, and to secure a good reverse lock position. Okay, now, to start the reverse lock, there's a couple things we want to key in on. Once we've secured the lock, it's important to control the inside space of the body. And as you can see, the lifter now is jamming his knee up under the armpit. He's getting his body as close to his opponent's body as possible. Again, this is a battle for the hips. Now, eventually the lifter is going to have to snatch his opponent's hips up onto his hips and stand up. His opponent is moving back and away. So the first thing we want to do is create a reaction on the defensive man to push back in. So the offensive man pushes in this way, creates a reaction, and then goes right into a snatch, steps up, and does his lift. Take a look at that one more time. The battle and control for the inside of the body here is really very important on this reverse lift. So we'll take a look at that one more time. Secure the lift, pressure in, create the reaction, snatch back, and stand right up to the lift. Okay, now let's take a look at the whole thing. A reverse lift, the setup, the lift, and then we'll finish with a nice back arch finish for 3 points, +1. Nice.
Here are several examples of this reverse lift technique. Here's two-time Olympic champion and four-time world champion Alexander Karelin of Russia with his version of the reverse lift.
Now we're going to take a look at reverse lift defense. Before we do, we're going to look at the basic position first. Again, our basic parterre position is here. Everything starts from here. On a lift defense now, the basic position, or reverse lift defense, the basic position is right to here. Want to pull our elbow to our knee and keep that elbow to knee position real good. Now it's real important that we prevent the lifter from getting to our body. By bringing the elbow to the knee, we keep him away. The movement is backing away. Again, everything in defending lifts is taking our hips out of position away from the lifter's hips. So if he's lifting on the right side, my position's here, and then I move back and away. Now notice the back leg. If I'm defending to the right here, and I turn my hip down too far, I become a little bit vulnerable to the opposite side. Two things that the offensive man will do if I turn my hip down. He may tilt me back and catch me this way, but the other thing is the offensive man may be jumping back and forth. And if I give up too much here, he may jump over to the other side, and I'm not able to react as quickly when my hip's down. If I keep my hips square again, we come back to that hip square position that we've talked about all the way through parterre defense. Hip square, again, notice my back anchor leg, butt cheeks pinched together, elevating at the hips, makes it real easy for me then to come back to this position, push back and away, back here, back and away, back here, back and away, short movement, back and away. That's our basic reverse lift position and movement drill. You can do that with your athletes on their own. And now let's take a look at what that looks like with a partner on top trying to do a reverse lift. Okay, because a reverse lift is real hard to disguise, it's easy to know when your offensive man is going to do a reverse lift. So once you feel him start to lock up the reverse lift position, right away you want to go elbow to knee, and he locks up the reverse position, he gets in there, you beat him already now. Now the offensive man is going to have to work to get to open you up to this position. So one of the things the offensive man will do is he'll jump side to side, and as he does that, the bottom man needs to continue to adjust back and forth. The other thing the defensive man needs to be able to do is when he's in this position, he should be moving his hips back and away, pushing back and away. Again, taking his hips as far away from the offensive man's hips as possible. Break. And come on back again. We'll take a look at that one more time. He secures his lock. He's going to lift. He's going to go side to side. The defensive man, again, suddenly moves back and away each time, back and away. Offensive man jumps, back and away. Offensive man jumps, back and away. Okay, now let's take a look at another position. When the offensive man secures his lock and he's beating the defensive man to the inside. Okay, now this is a little bit more advanced point in the lift. From this point, the defensive man is going to need to somehow come back to that elbow to knee position and to get his hips away. So from here, the defensive man is just going to pull back, post his forearm on the offensive man's knee, and then adjust right away to an elbow to knee position. Let's take a look at that again. We'll stop at this post position, pulls back, clears some space, pushes away. You don't want to stay there too long, but just enough to post, push, create a little space, and then right to that elbow to knee position, and then again start to move back and away. As you can see, motion is very important in all aspects of parterre defense, whether it's gut wrench, whether it's lift, whether it's reverse lift. The other thing that's very important in parterre defense is that the bottom man continues to react and has a very good feel and understanding is what the offensive man is trying to do.
Once again, apply the technique as you just learned it to the actual footage as you view these reverse left defense techniques.
Okay, here's a parterre movement defensive drill. What we're going to do is we're going to have the athlete just go through all his movements in the basic parterre position. There we see a lift. We see a gut wrench post, reverse lift position, changes off. Very good way to develop mobility, reactions in that bottom parterre position. Nice job, Jim.